Шановні гості, з технічних причин ми
Yes, for some technical reasons, we are forced to move a little bit the beginning of our event. Asking for your understanding, we will be starting at 10. Unfortunately, technically, we can't start at the moment, so that's why please enjoy your coffee, conversations, and we will be starting at 10. Thank you.
Dear guests, due to technical issues, we need to delay the start of our event for 15 minutes. We expect some of our guests to arrive, so we plan to start at 10 a.m. Thank you for understanding. Шановні гості, колеги, друзі, будь ласка, займайте свої місця у залі. Dear friends, guests and our partners, please take your seats. We will start in few minutes. Наша подія буде проходити українською мовою, однак деякі спікери будуть брати англійською. Тому, будь ласка, кому потрібен переклад, у нас є навушнички на початку залу.
We will have
Dear guests, the official language of the event is English, but is Ukrainians. But for those who need a translation, you can take speakers in the beginning on a table. Декілька технічних моментів. Ми щиро раді вітати вас сьогодні у цьому залі. Важливе оголошення. У разі оголошення повітряної тривоги ми змушені будемо
in
перервати нашу
case
подію.
there is air raid alert, we will have to interrupt our event and to go to the shelter.
Пройти до укриття можна через балкон і через внутрішній дворик до готелю Інтерконтиненталь. Саме там
It is
знаходиться
possible to
укриття.
go there by
By
going across the courtyard.
Our assistants will help you to get there in time. So we are ready to start. Для відкриття заходу
To start the event,
передаю слово Вірі Михайленко,
I pass the floor to Vera Mikhailenko, the president of the High Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine. Good morning, dear colleagues, dear partners, guests. Before we start this important event, let me remind us all who has made it possible. Every day we meet a lot of people, sincere, authentic Ukrainians, due to whom we are able to continue developing our state. So before we start with the festive procedure, let us take a minute of silence in honor of their memory.
Урочистості присвячені святкуванню 5-річчя Вищого антикорупційного суду.
So the fifth anniversary of High Anti-Corruption Court, I now open this event. And please don't take your seats now, because now it is the anthem of Ukraine.
Слава Україні. Дякую. Шановні колеги, партнери та гості.
Dear colleagues, partners and guests, today we are celebrating an important anniversary, 5 years since the start of procedural activities of High Anti-Corruption Court. And this is not just a date, that is a symbol of our joint fight for the state, for justice, and law is the same for all, despite of their social status, influence, or political weight. We are living in the times when values of justice are very relevant. We are on the threshold of huge changes, and we have a chance to make sure that these changes are for the best for everyone. The high objective, the ultimate objective of our work is not only punishing the perpetrators, the criminals, but to prevent them by developing the society where there is no place for corruption and justice is fair. Justice, it is not just a mechanism to punish someone for breaking the law. That's the heart of any democratic state. That's the moral foundation based on which the society and the state is built. All the social values are based on that. Without that, neither peace, nor progress, or welfare are possible. Because lack of justice results in chaos, lack of trust, and collapse of the society. Philosopher John Rawls said that justice is the ultimate value of social institutes and systems of thinking. We speak often about the rule of law, but what does it imply? This is about respect to everyone, everyone's dignity and rights. Our activities are based on the trust in principles of rule of law, democracy, and human rights. We understand that every decision made by High Anti-Corruption Court has long-reaching consequences for any society. That's not just a legal decision. These are signals that indicate the vector of development of the state. Our court also executes the ethical function of the state. This is reliance for everyone who's looking for justice and the price for those who try to undermine it. Plato believed that justice is the soul of the state. We are working to make sure that the soul is pure. And we aspire to make sure that every citizen trusts the judicial system and that everyone in Ukraine can feel sure that justice is exercised in a fair, impartial way. And justice, this is very important, but that's not something static. That's about the ongoing progress that requires our efforts and our dedication. During these 5 years, we've become witnesses and participants of great events. High Anti-Corruption Court has heard a lot of important cases which are markers of what's happening in the state. Our decisions were addressed not only to individuals, but to also systems and structures that were like untouchable before that. Those were precedents that were important steps towards a state where corruption is no longer normal. High Anti-Corruption Court is not just an institution. That is a guarantee of that in Ukraine it is possible and necessary to live based on principles of integrity and truth. And of course, it wouldn't be possible without your support and trust and professionalism. Every judge, every employee of the court has made a contribution to make sure that justice wins on the daily basis. This is not an easy path. The challenges that we face, that's not only about pressure, attempts to discredit, but also these are systemic problems that require a comprehensive approach. Over the 5 years, we've overcome a lot of obstacles, but even more are ahead. The society is changing. We need to keep pace with that. We are ready to new challenges. We are resolute in our actions. We want to develop an institution that will be the role model for the entire state. Our resolution and trust in what we are committed to remain unchanged. We still have to change a lot, and we are ready to do that, I'm sure. We have the power, knowledge, and support to continue developing and getting stronger. I would like to express sincere gratitude to those who has worked and continues working to make sure that our country improves. Your work is a role model. Your efforts are an important contribution to our joint future. Let's all together continue working to make sure that Ukraine is a country where justice and the rule of law are the values, where everyone continues living in a safe environment, knowing that the law protects them and justice is the reality. Thank you for your attention, and let's make sure that our work inspires everyone to new achievements. And I pass the floor to Head of High Anti-Corruption Court Appeal Chamber, Alexander Semennikov. Hello, dear colleagues and guests. On behalf of judges of the Appeal Chamber, I congratulate you on the 5th anniversary. This is not just an anniversary, that's an important milestone for the rule of law. 5 years ago, when we started, we faced significant challenges. We realized that the society had a lot of expectations for us, and fighting corruption is one of key aspects for integration to European community. From the first day of work, we faced the need to make decisions that significantly impact the future of Ukraine. And achievements over the 5 years have made sure that the court functions as a just and independent element of the system of justice. And we continue working transparently, but for us to continue doing that, we need support in developing our capacities, in particular increasing the number of judges. And we hope that soon new experts will join us who will share our values. And also for Appeal Chamber, still relevant is the issue of premises. For 5 years, that's been high on our agenda, and unfortunately, it has not yet been addressed. We are doing our best and hope we rely on support from state authorities and international partners to resolve the issue of premises, because that's a precondition so that courts could function with a high level of efficiency. We have a lot of plans, a lot of work. We are ready to new challenges. We are sure that activities of High Anti-Corruption Court and the Appeal Chamber will contribute to promotion of European values and democracy in the state. Thank you for supporting our work. Thanks to everyone who is making sure that Ukraine is a country governed by law and justice. Thank you. Five years ago, the High Anti-Corruption Court started its procedural activities in Beresteyski Avenue. The President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, then welcomed us, judges and employees and guests, on that important event. Unfortunately, because of the sad events that are ongoing in our country, the President could not join us today, but it is quite symbolic that here we are going to hear a representative of the presidential office, Irina Mudra. Dear judges, colleagues, guests, today it is my honor to welcome you all on behalf of the President of Ukraine, the head of staff and the guarantor of constitutional rights of citizens, to congratulate you on an important milestone of the history of our state, 5th anniversary of High Anti-Corruption Court. 5 years have passed since execution of administration of justice to protect human rights, the society and the state against corruption crimes was delegated to a specialized court that was set up in compliance with international standards. Today, a lot has been done to bring back trust of citizens in the system of justice, to ensure transparency in activities of public authorities, and to send a clear signal about that no one can be higher than the law. That's an important achievement that was possible due to joint work of the state and the society. The President of Ukraine, the presidential office, the government and the parliament show the resolution in implementing structural reforms aimed at overcoming corruption and promoting the rule of law, providing for accountability and transparency of the authorities. But without professional activities of the High Anti-Corruption Court, these attempts will not result in anything. The main idea when High Anti-Corruption Court was established was that it would administer justice based on the principles of the rule of law in criminal proceedings in corruption or corruption-related crimes. That would ensure everybody's right to fair justice and respect for human rights. And over the 5 years, High Anti-Corruption Court has become the core of anti-corruption authorities, and it determines the result of work of all the anti-corruption authorities. Trust of the society to the state, to judicial authorities, the place of Ukraine in the international area. And when starting, the court clearly stated that it is an independent, fair court that in its activities is governed only by the law, compliance with high standards of administration of justice, that makes fair, independent, and legitimate decisions. And an important area of your work since the onset of full-scale invasion by Russian Federation was bringing into the budget revenues of the sanctioned individuals. I express gratitude to head of court and to president of court, to head of appeal chamber for the significant results, for your dedication, for positive and efficient work and progress of the reforms in Ukraine in the field of anti-corruption and positive perception by our international partners, which is so important for implementation of our European integration aspirations. The 5 years of your work, that's about daily contribution in promotion of the rule of law and justice, and that's something that shows how we are resolute in fighting corruption. That's a clear message that the law and justice, these are values that form the basis for an independent and democratic state of Ukraine. I do believe that further on you will comply with high standards of administration of justice, that you will remain politically neutral and an independent institution, a role model for justice and impartiality. This is in line with expectations of the civil society and expectation of the Ukrainian nation for justice. For all of us, for the authorities, for the citizens, it's important that your every decision is based on evidence, that your every decision is fair, that every sentence, no matter what it is, that it were impartial and legal. I sincerely congratulate you on this date, and I wish you resilience and administration of justice based on principles of the rule of law, independence, and zero tolerance to corruption and lack of integrity. I wish you a lot of energy and new achievements in your important mission. Let your work be a role model for others and a guarantee of that justice and legality in Ukraine will always be top priority. Thank you. Thank you, Irina. It's nice to hear that. And of course, we will try and comply with these expectations and demands. Now I pass the floor to Stanislav Kravchenko, the president of the entire judicial system, the president of the Supreme Court, and of course, you are our guiding body. Thank you. Good morning, dear colleagues, dear President of the High Anti-Corruption Court, dear Head of the Appeal Chamber, Your Excellency, dear judges, dear representatives of international organizations, dear colleagues. This is an outstanding event today because we are here to celebrate 5 years since the beginning of procedural activities of High Anti-Corruption Court in Ukraine. The ex-president of Czech Republic, Václav Havel, said, unless we are able to fight corruption, we will not be able to fight for anything else. I believe that's true, because corruption is the evil that doesn't make it possible for any democracy to develop. It does not make it possible to develop fair society, to work, to win. And of course, this is the axiom that doesn't need to be proved, that if there are corruption processes, they would impede development of the state. Of course, every country decides for itself. We decide on the model of how we are going to progress fighting corruption. This is what Ukraine did. But we are past the time when we had those discussions like, do we need a separate vertical of law enforcement authorities? The decision was made and the National Anti-Corruption Bureau was established, the National Anti-Corruption Agency, the Specialized Prosecution Office, and the next step was the decision on whether we need a specialized anti-corruption court. That decision was made by politicians supported by the nation, and that happened. And then the process of development started. That was another year when the judges were selected. That was quite a challenging process, the first experience in our history based on those standards. And then High Anti-Corruption Court and Appeal Chamber were established. For the first time in the history of Ukraine, and according to the law, in the framework of the Supreme Court, the respective specialized anti-corruption chamber was established. And thus, due to your support in our state, we created this clear vertical of not only the law enforcement bodies, but also judicial authorities. Then we had to work hard. But let me mention the following. This sort of reforms are always challenging, even in more favorable conditions. While Ukraine has this destiny where the active phase of reforms actually coincided with the period of the war. Yes, we sometimes felt awkward referring to that as a war. We referred to that as an anti-terrorist operation, but now the world is a witness to that. The aggression started back in 2014 when annexation of the Crimea happened, as well as events in the east, and when temporarily occupied territories appeared. Hence the question how to provide for judicial control and oversight, and we had to deal to that. Then the global event, the global issue, COVID-19. Why I mentioned that? Because a judge as court cannot exist in isolation, because that's about procedures, about operation. And in the recent more than 2 years, we are subject to an open aggression. Every day there are shellings and attacks on Kyiv, where and the court's premises are. Hence the question how to comply with the provisions of the Constitution, where it is stipulated that only the courts that are established according to the Constitution function in Ukraine, and simplification of the procedures is impossible. This is what is being done by judges and being resolved by judges and judges of the Anti-Corruption Court. But we can be proud and we can tell everyone that we are overcoming those challenges. We are proving good results. I was with you when we celebrated 3 years since the beginning, the start of the war. And then I said that the period of kind of maturing of the court was already behind us. Now we need to focus on decision making and not only decisions of investigative judges, but also considering their cases here, the cases and merits and results of the work will be presented by the Alexander Marchuk, head of Cassation Court. But let me tell you already that no doubt the high anti-corruption court is now an established judicial institution having the authority, respect. That's a good example for other courts. Now the Supreme Court, with the support of our international partners, is implementing a number of activities to analyze the practice of European Court for Human Rights and regarding Ukraine. And I mentioned decisions made by the Anti-Corruption Court as a role model, because you may agree or disagree, but look how they can be, these decisions can be motivated. 5 years doesn't seem a lot, but the High Anti-Corruption Court never stands where it is, and it's developing actively. I am grateful to High Council of Justice that immediately responded to your initiative according to the law with the decision of High Anti-Corruption Court. The decision was made to increase the number of judges for courts of first instance and appeal court. It's important because due to specifics of procedural aspects, it may happen that the judges who heard the case in the first instance or investigative judges, they may block further proceedings, and without that, it wouldn't be possible to move on. There are questions about amendments to procedural laws, and here I'm grateful to the Ukrainian Parliament, the President. That's their initiative and their right to submit laws to the Parliament to organize operation of courts. Thank you for responding to some criticism, which helped not only the Anti-Corruption Court, but the entire system to organize the work efficiently. We see expanded authorities, mandate, and we've heard today that it's not only about criminal proceedings. The first wave in 2019, at the end of the year, the law was enacted which delegated the authority to High Anti-Corruption Court to hear civil confiscation cases. That's a new tool, instrument that Ukraine witnessed for the first time. And Irina has already mentioned that sanctions aspects, that's what's important. That added some assignments to the Supreme Court, to the Civil Cassation Court, Administrative Court in general. However, we can speak about that High Anti-Corruption Court has not only been established, but it is also efficiently developing.
During such events, there is a tradition to wish somebody. Within judges, we have this wish: the fewer the cases or the easier the cases. This I will not wish to you, because this is not going to be the case. You will have a lot of work, and therefore I would like to wish you that you will go on with honor and dignity, going along this way, meet the expectations and hopes of our people, of our state, and that you would not lose this decent evaluation within the society, so that once a judge, when they reach their retirement age, they can say that I did everything possible for this country, and I'm convinced this is the way it's going to be. Many thanks for your attention. Thank you, Stanislav, for your really wise, well-weighted words. Thank you for seeing us as the important institution within the system of justice and for the high evaluation of our work. I would like to invite to this floor representatives of the first session, Theodor Deo, the Deputy Director of the Mission in Ukraine. Ole Mikkelsen, Denmark Ambassador to Ukraine. Stefan Schleuner, Head of Cooperation Programs at the EU Delegation to Ukraine. Alan Pach Christensen, Head of the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative of the European Union in Ukraine and our big friend. And Irina Mudra, Deputy Head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. I would like to invite you, first of all, Theodor Deo. Definitely the institutional development of the High Anti-Corruption Court are not possible without the support and assistance. It's no secret that the United States of America would always play the key role in this process, both globally at the level of the state and in the context of the systematic support of some special reforms. That's why I would like to ask Ms. Theodora, Deputy Director of the USAID mission in Ukraine. Many thanks. Good morning, esteemed judges. Thank you for the invitation to be here. For me, it's a great honor to represent the United States at this event, together with a lot of partners from the government, court, civil society, and international partners. 5 years ago, the High Anti-Corruption Court creation was a significant step forward. It has become the cornerstone of the anti-corruption efforts of Ukraine, strengthening the capacity of Ukraine to provide for the transparency and accountability. Fighting corruption at the high level, this was this was the main request of the brave citizens who were out there at the Revolution of Dignity. They wanted changes and they demanded the European future, and the fairness should play for everybody. Ukraine has to be proud fulfilling this promise. And we are also proud that we have been your partners in reaching this important stage in your development. The High Anti-Corruption Court has demonstrated the Ukraine's devotedness to justice, rule of law, even in the conditions of the cruel, full-scale invasion that gives us daily challenges. The court continues its important work. The court has already sentenced 223 corruption officials and collected $350 million in favor of the state. The state has also introduced the innovative approach to selection of judges, engaging international experts to provide for the transparent and competition-based process. This cooperation with international community helps strengthening belief and trust to independence, integrity, and professionalism of the court. In any democracy, trust to this system of justice is an absolute must. I'm very much proud personally about the partnership between the United States and the European Union and our other partners in supporting civil experts, Civil Council of International Experts. The recently appointed council has already started the process of selecting further groups consisting of 25 judges that will improve further the effectiveness of the court. But we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Private sector, international community, and Ukrainians themselves want to see institutions that could bring to responsibility the corrupted officials. Staying within the rule of law is a key to economic growth and engagement of investment. That means that we need more reforms. We aim to help strengthen the independences and effectiveness of the system of justice, in particular with the judges who implement the highest standards of integrity and professionalism. The High Anti-Corruption Court is a key component of the system of justice of Ukraine and a promise for the future. That future That is something that Ukraine is fighting for. The country which is independent, sovereign, democratic, and integrated into the European and Atlantic cooperation of nations. The United States of America will continue to stay your reliable partner. I have the honor to welcome you with these first 5 years. Thank you. Thank you, Teodora, and a special thank you for your beautiful Ukrainian. Definitely, our relationship with our international institutions are not possible without the representatives of the diplomatic missions. Now I would like to take the floor and to share their vision in terms of how Ukraine is integrated in general, and anti-corruption court. Ole Mikkelsen, ambassador of Denmark to Ukraine. The floor is yours, Mr. Ole.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this this distinguished panel. And I take the invitation for me as Denmark's ambassador as a recognition of Denmark's role in the fight against corruption, and Ukraine as implementing partner for the European anti-corruption program. We're very proud of having that role, working closely with our friends from the European Union and also, of course, our Ukrainian friends and not least our American friends. It's very much a common endeavor. I wanted to give you the perspective from one of your partner countries, how I see the fight against corruption. And when I arrived here in 2022, I was actually a bit puzzled about Denmark's role in the fight against corruption, because after all, Denmark eradicated corruption more than 200 years ago. So what would Denmark be able to bring to the table in terms of anti-corruption work in Ukraine? I was also puzzled about this system that was established with having separate anti-corruption institutions outside the normal structures. I said, why wouldn't you just use the normal court system and the police and the prosecution? But I soon realized that this is not possible at this point in time. There are very good reasons for doing that, but it's something that I need to explain to visiting Danish ministers, lawmakers, and we have a lot coming here. And I'm using the notion islands of integrity, that those institutions are kind of islands of integrity outside the normal structure. And then say, okay, now I know what you mean. But why is the fight against corruption such a crucial part of Denmark's support for Ukraine? After all, Ukraine is, as well known, fighting for its survival as a sovereign and free nation. And is the fight against corruption some luxury that we can afford at this point in time? And of course, Denmark is, as you all know, very active in the support for Ukraine's struggle on the battlefield. I'm normally saying that we're doing 3 things in Ukraine: weapons, weapons, and weapons, because that's the bulk of what Denmark is doing. More than 90% of our total support for Ukraine, that's weapon and defense equipment. But we're also doing very important civilian programs, and our support for the EUACI is a key component of our civilian support. And this is, as you just said, this was actually what Ukrainians demanded on during the Revolution of Dignity in 2014. This was the key demand, that they wanted to live in a state, in a nation, in a dignified manner. They wanted European values. So this is, of course, key to the transformation of Ukrainian society, and that we want to support. But there's another reason, because whenever we have, as I said, visiting ministers or lawmakers from Denmark, the first question I'm being asked already in the car when we're driving from the station, that's about corruption. That's a big worry that many Danish decision makers are having, and I don't think that's something that applies to Denmark alone. I think that's all your partners. That's a big worry, and this is, of course, particularly important for us, because you might know that we have assumed the patronage for the rebuilding and the recovery of the city and the oblast of Mykolaiv in the south. And And this, of course, and we have invested heavily there, more than 150 million euro in the last 17 months. That's a lot of money. That's a huge injection of money. And of course, there is a risk of corruption. And we're also doing, you might have heard about what we call the Danish model for supporting Ukraine's armed forces. That's by direct acquisition of weapons and defense equipment from Ukrainian producers. And of course, these activities makes us prone to, that there's a risk of corruption in both cases, and that would have devastating consequences if that were to happen. The Danish public is very, very supportive of Ukraine, but any case of corruption would have a devastating impact on that support. So that's another good reason for supporting the fight against corruption. And then there's a third and final one, and that's Ukraine's European aspirations. And with the historical EU application, just 4 days after the full-scale Russian attack, Ukraine has made tremendous progress in the EU accession process. It has been a breathtaking journey that resulted in Ukraine receiving or achieving candidate status in June 2022. And to qualify for EU membership, you have to live up to what is called the Copenhagen criteria. That they were, by coincidence, defined in our capital way back in history in 1993, but there's still the standards for any country wishing to enter the European Union. And one of the key components of the Copenhagen criteria are strong institutions and the absence of corruption. So there are many good reasons for us to support the fight against corruption, and I'm proud that Denmark is a part of this struggle, that we're working closely with our partners to achieve this. And the battle is not over. We are in the middle of it. But let me assure that Denmark will be just as steadfast in our fight against corruption as we are in our support for the armed struggle on the battlefield. And let me take this opportunity also to thank the High Anti-Corruption Court, the anti-corruption institutions, the integrity cities. I see some of them are present here today, civic society, politicians, and the media for your hard and dedicated work fighting corruption. And we are proud to support you. Now, the headline for this panel is actually the strategic vision for the High Anti-Corruption Court. So when I was preparing myself, I was asking myself that what is the future? Well, what should we aim at? So let me share with this with you, and it's very simple, because my vision is that 5 years from now there will be no need for a separate anti-corruption court. 5 years from now, the ordinary court system, which you represent, Mr. President, should be able to handle corruption cases just like any other criminal cases. And the same applies to the other anti-corruption institutions, the islands of integrity. Their functions should be handled by the police or the state prosecution as part of a legal system with the highest level of integrity. So in other words, my vision is that instead of having islands of integrity, we should have a continent of integrity. Ukraine, as such, the whole nation of Ukraine should be one continent, one nation of integrity. And it's a bold vision. I know that it might not be realistic. We might not be able, you might not be able to achieve that in 5 years' time. I'll probably not be Denmark's ambassador at that time, but if I'm able, I will be following this very closely. And it will, if it happens, it will be a milestone in Ukraine's transformation. Thank you once again for inviting me. And as I said, very proud to be your allies in this epic struggle.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Основним лейтмотивом цього року,
The main highlight of this year is absolutely the victory and European integration. Both processes are not possible without the support of the European Union. Our country has clear list of requirements, and the development of the High Anti-Corruption Court is one of those requirements. Therefore, I would like to ask Stefan Schlöning to share his vision of the implementation of this requirement, and possibly you can give us some advice.
Thank you very much. first of all say that it's a big privilege and honor to share the floor today, this morning, for this important anniversary with the Ukrainian representatives of the Ukrainian leadership, the distinguished members of the judiciary, and our international and diplomatic partners. And let me specifically acknowledge indeed the very close partnership with Denmark in co-leading, co-implementing this support in our flagship program, the EU Anti-Corruption Initiative that is leading that effort, and also the very close partnership with the United States in co-steering that process. Now, you mentioned, EU accession, Ukraine becoming a full member of the European Union soon. And I think what I would like to start with is to say that very bold and successful reforms in the rule of law area were indeed key elements that paved the way for the historical decision of the European Council back in December last year to open accession negotiations with Ukraine. That has been a goal for many years, but it did happen also thanks to the very hard work and the good progress in the area of rule of law and anti-corruption reforms. The High Anti-Corruption Court was the last of the anti-corruption institutions to be set up in 2019. I remember, having worked on Ukraine from 2015, the early stages and the initial discussions about creating the court. It seemed a long way, and it was not always an easy process, but I think we managed, and back several years ago, the whole anti-corruption architecture was established. Now, after 5 years of existence, we see impressive results. We see, verdicts, convictions that were mentioned already. We see reclaimed assets that are channeled back to state funding and actually help to also strengthen Ukraine's defense capacities. Now, at the same time, I think it's very important that anti-corruption reforms must still be encouraged further. They will be a key element towards EU accession, but they will also domestically contribute to strengthening Ukrainian resilience, improving the business climate for Ukrainian businesses, and help enable a swift recovery. And I think it is also important to mention, while Ukraine has progressed a lot also on international corruption indexes, there are still, amongst the Ukrainian population, businesses, concerns about, in believing in the functioning of the judicial and anti-corruption systems. There are still vested interests that try to undermine the system, to roll back reforms. And I think that is something we jointly and collectively need to fight against. We called last year for further building the anti-corruption framework to further strengthen the capacities. There is important legislation to be adopted. It's important that the High Anti-Corruption Court proceeds with the selection and appointment of new judges. And all of that is also important, in the context of our financial support, the Ukraine plan, where there are indeed important steps and indicator in this crucial area. We will also have very soon, in Brussels, meetings in the context of the EU accession negotiations, chapter 23, chapter 24, bureaucratic terms, but very important policy areas, parts of the so-called fundamentals that will be, or are the first ones being opened in the accession negotiations and will be the last ones to be closed. So your role in helping closing these negotiations quickly will be important. Let me close by saying that as the European Union, we will, of course, continue supporting you in this very important endeavor with our partners, with our flagship program, the EU Anti-Corruption initiative. And let us indeed hope that the vision that the Danish ambassador outlined for time 5 years from now will materialize. And in addition, Ukraine will become a full member of the European Union very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your support, for your vision. Thank you. Створення Вищого антикорупційного суду,
Creating high anti-corruption and the development of the high anti-corruption court definitely is also the demand of time and the certain reply to some societal expectations. And of course, this is also the support of donors organizations. Anti-corruption initiative of the European Union, I think European Union is our most active partner. We have a very lengthy history of our cooperation, and really hope to continue it. So, Mr. Christensen, possibly you can share with us your vision of our further partnership within the anti-corruption.
Thank you so much, Vira. It's really a great honor for me and a pleasure to take part in this event today. I would like to begin by congratulating the High Anti-Corruption Court, its leadership, its judges and other staff. I think what you have created together during the last 5 years is indeed remarkable. The results you have achieved are really significant. 207 verdicts, 106 prison sentences, 40 persons behind bars, all in high-level corruption cases. And of course, one thing is the numbers. It's not less important the fact that your work is being respected, that you have managed to build trust to your institution. And I believe the court has become the best example of fair and just trials in Ukraine. The court has faced a number of challenges on its way, and each time demonstrated a strong resilience. The court and its dedicated staff, despite Russia's invasion, the court continued its work. I was told that there was not a single day where the court was not active processing its cases. Let me take you 5 years back in time, just for 1 minute or two. We were there from the very beginning. The EUACI, together with our American colleagues, contributed to the establishment of the court. I think started in August 2018. And at that time, we all had this uncertainty about the course, about the court. I mean, would it become a success? The expectations were sky high. We also knew that the risks were substantial. We knew that all the previous attempts at reforming the court system of Ukraine failed. We knew that ordinary courts were not able to adjudicate high-level corruption cases. That led to impunity for many corrupt officials. They became untouchable. As an example, in the 4 years preceding the High Anti-Corruption Court, none of the cases of suspicion of judges prepared by NABU and SABU ended up with a prison sentence in ordinary courts. None of those cases. And the view of civil society organizations and international partners at that time was that only the High Anti-Corruption Court could change the situation, and so you did. Today, judges are among those that are given prison verdicts and together with many other high-level officials. One thing was to get the legislation in place to establish the court. That was not easy. Another thing was how to make it operational, how to select the judges, how to provide the basic infrastructure, IT, administrative systems, security. And we only, with our American partners, had a few months to prepare for all that. I think an important aspect of the success of the court was this innovative way of selecting the judges by involving international experts. It also illustrated the importance attached to ensuring judges with a very high level of integrity. Judges went through a comprehensive vetting process and a number of different tests before the selection could be made. We are now going through this process once again. The second wave of judges will be selected during the next months. The court will get more staff and more capacity, and that is most welcome and much needed. The Public Council of International Experts will once again have an important say in the selection process. And we are from our side providing all different kinds of technical support to ensure the best possible process. And we are doing it together with our American partners. While the court is expanding, it also needs more space and new premises. This issue is becoming still more urgent, and we hope that a solution will be found soon. It also goes for the Peace Chamber, as we heard before. For several years, they have been struggling with premises that are too small and not appropriate for a court. The EUACI was recently extended for 3 more years, and we will continue our partnership with the court with all the capacity building activities we have, training, institutional development, international expertise, study tours, and you name it. And we are also there to support you when you feel the challenges of Russia's war, be it with generators, batteries, other equipment that can keep the court functioning. That's very important for us. Becoming 5 years old, we think that this is a good time to think about the future and have a strategic vision. And I was quite happy to see the title of this panel today about having a strategic vision. While I, in principle, share the vision of my ambassador, I have to say that, I perhaps also would say that that it's right to have a vision for the court itself. And I think if we were going to provide a vision for you, then I would say at least 4 issues would be included in that vision. One would be that the court should live up to the very best international standard for court practices and become a role model for all Ukrainian courts. It should improve its track record and continue to deliver high quality results, but do it faster. It should become a top modern court, a paperless workplace, taking full advantage of the electronic e-case management system. It should be even more open to the public and more actively communicate about its great results. I wish the court all the best in the next year and we'll look forward to continuing our great cooperation, guided by a strategic vision for the future. And I would like to thank the court and all its staff for the excellent work that you are doing. Keep up the good work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Alan. Thank you. Співпраця з нашою наступною спікеркою почалася фактично одразу після повномасштабного вторгнення.
Cooperation with our next speaker started immediately after full-scale invasion, when it became relevant to discuss the assets of legal entities and individuals who supported the policy of the aggressor. Now Irina is deputy head of the office of the President of Ukraine, so it would be interesting to hear from you how you see development of anti-corruption justice in Ukraine. Thank you. I believe everybody would agree that our joint agenda of reforms in the field of corruption is aimed at efficient fight of fighting corruption, support of trust from the society. That's what we are lacking. Trust in the rule of law and promotion of our ultimate goal, and this is full-fledged membership in the EU. We try to keep independent and competent authorities to counteract corruption at the highest level, where the High Anti-Corruption Court plays the key role. One of relevant areas of reforms in the anti-corruption field is development of institutional capacity and infrastructure. And as Mr. Christensen mentioned, that's also about expansion of the staff and of anti-corruption court. The competition procedure is ongoing. However, we also need to ensure the work of the Independent Council of International Experts. And in Verkhovna Rada, we already have a draft law on expanding the mandate of the Civic Council of International Experts for the required term to make sure that we select the proper number of members of the anti-corruption court at all the instances and level. We remember that according to the law, after completion of the term of service of the Civic Council of International Experts, since it was seen as a temporary, and this mandate will go to Civic Council of Integrity. And that was the recommendation of the Venice Commission. But while we don't have the complete membership in the anti-corruption court, the authority of the board of experts, international experts, will be expanded. And under the memorandum of economic and financial policy of IMF, in view of the fourth revision, there is the requirement to enhance the efficiency of the court and amendments to procedural legislation and procedural code that would rationalize hearing of cases at the first instance individually by the court's judge or a collegium of 3 judges. Another important area of work that we're planning to envisage in the strategy for development of justice. And by the way, the first draft of the strategy has already been developed by the presidential office. We submitted it to all the relevant stakeholders, including NGOs and our international partners. And we plan to hold a public discussion of this strategy. So another area is enhancement of efficiency of the Civic Council of Integrity. There are questions open to discussion regarding operation and efficiency of this body. And of course, it requires enhanced institutional capacity, the self-governing bodies, High Commission of Justice. We know that the High Council of Justice needs to be complemented with the members, including representatives of the president, and that's one of priority tasks for me and my team. We are going and resolute to implement the reform. We are open to cooperation, to public discussion, to the required steps to be undertaken. And I'm very grateful for your openness. We often discuss certain questions that require further legislative settlement. And again, congratulations on your anniversary and thank you for your work. Thank you, Irina. Thanks. Usually, when we speak about the court's decisions, we think about judicial verdicts. Now, with this phrase, it may imply not so much making a decision, but cooperation between the civil society and the judicial authorities, and implementation of the principle of openness and transparency as promoted by the High Anti-Corruption Court in our work to make sure that this transition period for development of anti-corruption justice in Ukraine, so that it were as clear as possible, not only for representatives of the judicial community, but also for everyone, every citizen in Ukraine. So now I'm ready to pass the floor to Andriy Borovik, and he will speak about Transparency International portal. And let me mention a disclaimer. As you know, the media said that the editorial office may not share the opinion of the author. However, the pluralism and openness, that's our value. No sound. Hello, dear friends and colleagues. Above all, I would like to welcome judges and employees of the court. 5 years well, 8 years ago, nobody would believe even that one day we will have this anniversary. Before me, there were 7 speakers, and I have something to add, speaking about the court. What I like, what I believe is cool, what the High Anti-Corruption Court is doing. Above all, it meets, not everywhere, of course, not for everyone, but to some extent, it satisfies a thirst for justice. Polyakov, Dimasus, several years ago, nobody could even imagine that they could have their sentences one day. We also often forget about that the main objective of a corruption is enrichment and confiscation of state assets that are brought back to the state budget. That's a good achievement. And the third aspect that we do not mention that often, but now due to some legislative initiatives, we're speaking about that. That's about the agreements. High Anti-Corruption Court has started using this instrument, this tool, in a more efficient way, and I like that because that shortens the period between the beginning of the proceeding and the verdict made. That makes the procedure more efficient and cheaper. And these achievements of the court, well, my team for 5 years has been monitoring work of the court. We attend the sessions, and thank you for your understanding that you allow us to be present. We are grateful for your support. So we thought that it would make sense to develop a separate platform where it would be possible to, in more detail, speak about what's going on with consideration of cases in a High Anti-Corruption Court and to make it as a source of information. Now it is, I believe, even more relevant, this platform, especially in the light of what was mentioned, chapters 23, 24 of Ukraine's integration. Anti-corruption becomes even more important in the context of our integration process. And so we developed this resource. The High Anti-Corruption Court made the decision, and we had a discussion. I had the idea of vegetable garden, meaning that people are imprisoned as vegetables are planted, but nobody supported this idea anyway, so this is the name. So we are ready with a detailed description of the cases with the parties in case. For each case, there will be individual information cards and individual timeline. And also what we don't have in the judicial registry, there will be a search option. Very convenient. It will make it possible to search for cases based on the parties, judges, prosecutors. That's the difference from the current registry. Our objective was to make it more accessible and understandable for people, that we already have results in our anti-corruption struggle. So, of course, that's not only about achievements of the court, that's also about the work of judges and prosecutors, but we often forget about these achievements ourselves, and they may not be visible for the partners. It is a bilingual resource where we are trying to explain what's happening in the court, how the cases are heard, that the results are there. This is going to be a resource about the relevant state of things, and in this way we will be explaining that the justice works, it can be understandable and accessible. So if you have any comments, we will of course correct what needs to be corrected, but we invite you to read the news, read the analysis, and using the opportunity, let me mention that our 5th annual report on work of High Anti-Corruption Court will be published somewhere in October. And again, congratulations on the anniversary. Thank you. Thank you, Andrei. So now I only have to express gratitude to speakers of the first session, for your participation, for your inspiration and vision of us as an institution. And now you're welcome to have some coffee and cookies. So we have a coffee break.
.358, Albert Finster, age 25, bachelor, has an obsession in finding out that things really do go better with Coke. Age 358, bachelor, age 25, Albert.
What would you put on your sound system?
Finster. Albert.
Albert, what you put on your sound system?
Like you never want to try my love and see how well it fits. Baby, can you see when you look at me? I can keep this feeling when it hits. All alone, my bed night. I grab my pillow and squeeze it tight. I dream of you all the time. What about one do? I'm sharing my grief. احنا اللي من قلبنا للحب غنينا ده منه العجب شفنا منه العجب على طول ليالي اللي بنصحنا اللي
Колеги, будь ласка, займайте місця у залі, ми розпочинаємо.
Colleagues, please take your seats. We will be starting.
Доброго дня, шановні колеги.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I would like to ask you to join us in the second session, and I would like to start it and to invite to this panel Sergei Moisak, the judge of HACC. He will announce our common work, the judges of the High Anti-Corruption Court. Today, he is announcing the publication of the monography, setting of the dear participants. Once again, welcome. I would like to thank you for coming over to our celebration, to the anniversary of operation of the Anti-Corruption Court. And we wanted to explain to you that the work in this High Anti-Corruption Court is not only about justice. I can't say that it's in free of time. It's probably free from sleep time. We're also doing some scientific work and some other creative initiatives which we wanted to share with you. Approximately around in May this year, we had an idea to create, until the 5th anniversary, to create a creative scientific work that would be devoted to the 5th anniversary of the Anti-Corruption Court in Ukraine. And I'm very much thankful to my colleagues who agreed and support this idea, and thanks to them, this particular work has been done and can be used for the civil society. Separately, I wanted to thank OSCE for the support for when they found out about the possibility of this powerful potential to compose this monography. They supported by agreeing to publish it. That will help significantly to us and other stakeholders to know more about the essence and the role of the High Anti-Corruption Court, because certain things were translated into English. So that means that all our partners, all stakeholders, not on the territory of Ukraine, but also abroad, will be able to use it. And a separate thanks to the editors. This work was edited by scientists Oksana Kaplina, Irina Galavyuk, and Yevgen Petrov. They also contributed part of their expertise to our work. As you see, this is how it looks like, this monography, Establishment of the Anti-Corruption Justice in Ukraine. We also have it in, for the time being, it is still in e-format, but in the next few days it will be published, and each of the participants will have the possibility at least to read it, to look through it. Possibly there are some plans to make some separate presentation of the monography itself, where we will present the possibility to talk to the authors who participated in its creation. What would I want to say about this work? The authors were looking at the background, preconditions of establishment of the High Anti-Corruption Court within these 5 years in the conditions of pandemic, conditions of war, key positions with which our judges are facing. All of it was disclosed in this work, and we are very much thankful to them for this. I want to once again emphasize that this is not the official vision of the High Anti-Corruption Court, but rather these are scientific visions of each judge separately, and maybe in separate questions they are quite brave, which can't be maybe put into judge decisions, judge rulings these days. In terms of the contents, it consists of 3 chapters. In the first chapter, we open up the history of the development, how the court judges were selected, how the jurisdiction expanded for HACC. And that's also is a big interest because directly from the authors, not somebody from the site, but rather the persons who were involved of the competition and this justice establishment to find out about the development of the HACC. The second section is devoted mostly to criminal justice. It is broken down into 2 components. First of all, it's the control over the pre-court investigations, and another section which is connected to directly justice. These are the provision measures. This issue is quite well reflected. Also, taking out certain documents during searches, and some key problems which we have faced as judges, and they have disclosed, taking into account their potential, those directions, those outcomes that they saw as feasible for the society. The third block, the third chapter, is devoted to the administrative and civil justice, those cases which are quite new to the HACC, but they're still as important and as meaningful. Also, I would like to mention that this particular work has this very systematic character, because in the beginning we thought that maybe we will not be able to put together under one objective and one aim, but finally we understood that this is one single work that would be of interest and will be beneficial both to educators, students, and all stakeholders who are making creative or scientific searches related to the activity of HACC. Also, I wanted to bring your attention to the point that the High Anti-Corruption Court has announced the competition of the scientific works devoted to the 5th anniversary of the court operation. Students can participate, but actually anyone else who has graduated not later than 5 years ago, there's a commission in the Anti-Corruption Court that will be selecting in these works, and the winners will also be defined by this commission, and they will receive certain rewards. Therefore, I would like to mention that everybody who is willing, your friends, your acquaintances who love to participate in such creative undertakings, please do engage. Also, I'm drawing your attention that the HACC has really a significant scientific and creative potential with the participation of the employees and staff of HACC, as well as the educators from educational institutions. they have issued the scientific and practical comment of the law of Ukraine on High Anti-Corruption Court. This will be of interest to all stakeholders who are interested in the activity of the HACC. That's why, for colleagues, I would like to wish new creative outcomes, creative searches, and for everybody present who are interested in the work of the HACC, so they would be interested not only in their court decisions, but also in their scientific outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. And on behalf of all the team, let me express gratitude to our academic and creative inspirers, Sergei, Moisak, and Mr. Evchuk, because who is also with us here, because without them it would not be possible for us to organize our creative enthusiasm and to coordinate that with our busy work agenda and to kind of conduct this academic analysis and summarize 5 years of our operation of our activities. So please look through the table of content, and if you have further questions about our vision there, I believe it will be very interesting to try and explore more and open up some questions. Let's move on. The next guest to speak is Alexander Marchuk, head of Cassation Criminal Court of the Supreme Court. As mentioned by Vera, by the President, we try to pursue the best practices of the Supreme Court in our work. So we are looking forward to you to share your suggestions for our further work. So let me say the following. Today, even though the second part of today's agenda is practical, but still this is about celebration. 5 years, this is an important event, important date for such an outstanding institution that has already proven its benefits. A lot of speakers at the previous panel as well were speaking about how important it is to enhance anti-corruption institutions, how important that is, the more so that this is such a challenging time for our state. The system of criminal justice, all in all, makes a significant contribution into our victory, in particular by administration of justice, even though corruption, crimes, and the verdicts there, that's just 2.6% of all the convicted persons. However, we should speak about significance of the themes that we cover. And even though this may sound like not huge figures, but public interest to this phenomenon is very important, because we know that corruption is one of the most negative social phenomena, and consequences of it are versatile and diverse. So this may result in economic collapse of the state, social tension in the state, when every citizen in the situation of war sees that as one of mandatory conditions for our state to prevail. That's a mandatory condition for European integration. That's a precondition for further development of the state after the war. So these are the phenomena that we need to fight, and we need to do that efficiently. Thus, one of the bodies that work very efficiently there is the High Anti-Corruption Court. It functions for detection, investigation, and court hearing prosecution of this category of crimes during the war is one of priorities. Now, let's speak about our relations with High Anti-Corruption Court, in particular in development of court practice. Of case law. We've organized a number of activities, in particular those where we try to bring together the opinion of the courts, judges of the Supreme Court. We involved representatives of the bar. So we try to develop common vision for implementation and addressing of some contested, controversial issues for the material procedural law. These questions have always arisen, and they will, because the Supreme Court comes up with the final statements on these aspects and provides for sustainability of the case law. So I hope for further fruitful work, further meetings and achievements, because judges, as both in other countries and in the state, they may be similar, but also they have a lot of differences. That's about individual nature, experience, life experience, work experience, but we have something in common, and this is aspiration to perfection. We are ready to study, to learn, we are open, we are ready to work in very difficult conditions. Today we spoke about shortage of staff for the court, but this is relevant for the entire judicial system. So one court does not feel well if the entire system is failing. So the system needs to recover and get stronger only by moving together, by developing common vision, and by implementing the main task. And this is administration of law by administration of justice. And even though this is a festive event today, we above all need to express gratitude. Well, obviously that for the court to be efficient, the staff of the court need to be efficient, and they are working under a lot of challenges. So above all, I'm grateful to those who are working in these challenging conditions with air raid alerts, blackout situations. Today was no exception. Basically, today, all of us were traveling in the midst of that air raid alert. Many of you could hear shooting today, and our warriors were working tonight again to overcome the evil. It's important to overcome the external enemy, but also it's important above all to fight the internal evil. Corruption is the greatest evil that we have in our state, and only with joint efforts of all the judges, the civil society, and our partners can we achieve good results there. And I do hope that we will have those results. In the previous session, His Excellency mentioned that there are these islands of perfection, of integrity. However, it is important that that became a true monolith, that we joined efforts to form the platform for integrity and for the results that we are aspiring to. There is high demand of the society for justice, and the way to implement it, that's what we can and must do, I mean, the judicial sector in Ukraine. And of course, this is about positive good wishes and about celebrating, but still this is a practical session. And even though I had a lot of plans, I have several pages of a speech, but this is celebration, so I'm going to make it really shorter, not to take too much of your time. However, let me share several ideas and achievements that we've had this year, because the previous achievements together with the anti-corruption court, we covered that in reviews. These were those relating to procedural methods, maybe not always with the anti-corruption court, but it is something relevant for the entire system. This is about case law for searches, because procedural aspects, that's not only about corruption crimes, that's also about investigating all categories of crimes. and decision-making there. So recently, about the recent achievements of the Supreme Court for this category of cases. So the element of abuse of power, this is Article 368 of the Criminal Code. It covers the aspect of abusing the authority. So it doesn't limit itself to action or inactivity in the framework of service of professional competences. That's also about using the opportunities that are conditioned by the possession. What it means. In this case, it was proven that a village head expressed the suggestion that he is going to personally apply measures abusing his position to influence the head of electric networks to move a land plot where the high voltage lines were located. However, he could not apply any measures to move this high voltage line, and he didn't do that, even though he requested that and he received money as kickback. Further on, he went back to this individual and he said that the application on allocation of the land plot will be heard at the session of the village council, but for the decision to be made, after decision making, they were supposed to pay money to the head of the village council. There was the meeting, the money was paid, and then he was detained, and these actions were documented by law enforcement authorities. As a result of a hearing by the Court of Appeal, actions of this individual were qualified as Article 190, Part 4 crime, and that is fraudulent activity, but the Supreme Court disagreed. The Court of Appeal did not take into account that according to the provisions on prohibition of illegal enrichment, according to the criminal code, an official cannot receive any remuneration in the context of performing official duties. Thus, it is indicated that criminal liability for violation of this prohibition applies when somebody offering the bribe realizes that they are offering this bribe in the context of the opportunities that are made available by this possession. And the one who accepts that is aware of the opportunities, of the status, of the weight of the possession. So the objective of the latter and the probability of that the goal will be reached are taken into account. So the decision of the Court of Appeal under Article 190 of the Criminal Code was withdrawn, and a new hearing in the Appeal Court was appointed. And also in 2024, the Supreme Court considered the decision regarding the state labor inspection and the employees under Article 168. So what that is about, the right to draft protocols on administrative violations is not yet about law enforcement activity of the body. And authorities of an SLS inspector includes visits on relating to labor relations and detection of violations of law. So the mandate to qualify somebody's action as violation, but from the positions of a public authority, not law enforcement agency. Here we refer to the conclusions of the Grand Chamber of the 30th of August 2030, according to which the criteria for considering public authorities as law enforcement authorities, they depend on functional features that attribute these bodies to the respective category. Law enforcement agencies, these are the ones who exercise law enforcement function. So in the process of deciding whether somebody is an employee of a law enforcement agency, we need to ground on systemic analysis of provisions of the Constitution, the Code of Administrative offenses, and other regulations that regulate the legal status of particular public authorities that are employers of an individual, as well as job duties that include implementation of law enforcement function and including coercive activities, and also based on the law on administrative offenses, on pension support for the respective category of employees. I would also like to mention the example of a court verdict on abuse of power, and this is about part 3 of Article 191 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine. The following conclusions were made. If an prosecutor conducts investigation of a criminal proceeding for the goal of enrichment, that proves that they abuse their power, and this falls under Article 191. Now, this is a question to the organizers. What we do next? Dear colleagues, unfortunately, we have to suspend our event because the air raid alert is announced and we have the shelter in Intercontinental. We can go by moving along the backyard. Unfortunately, we cannot continue while the air raid alert is on. We will continue as it stops.
Шановні гості, пан голова Кримінального касаційного суду в складі
Dear
Верховного
guests, dear chairman, the chairman was forced to go back to his procedural responsibilities. He has left a presentation for us. Who wants to get to know the latest, he can get from our organizers this material, and we will be looking forward and going further. Thanks to the armed forces for the possibility to continue working. I would like to ask Tatiana Krikleeva, the judge of the first instance of the High Anti-Corruption Court. Ms. Tatiana will give us the information, what conclusions we know, what prospects are, and further plans. Tatiana, the floor is yours. Many thanks, Ms. Inna. Dear participants, dear participants of the conference, many thanks for sharing this celebration with us. I would like to welcome all the judges, welcome the staff, because it's very important element for making decisions is the reliable, well-aligned work of the staff. Thanks to their precise work as the Swiss watch, the necessary decisions are taken, then that in the future can be open and they can really help you. In the first place, I would like to thank the employees of the court, and take into account that we need to summarize the work of High Anti-Corruption Court within the last 5 years. It would be very nice to look at the composition of the court. Everything is working fine. If we look from the historical, still in the first edition of the Criminal Procedural Code, but Article 9 contained the rules that are on some special positions in accordance to the law on public service, and all the positions which are mentioned as the first category, they are done collegially as part of the 3 professional judges who have the term of office at least 5 years. In the appeal court, it's 5 judges who have the term in the office at least of 7 years. In the future, this norm was specified. Sorry. Very quickly. So, in accordance to the changes that were foreseen by the law of Ukraine about the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, it has foreseen that all of the cases that go to NABU, these judges of the first instance shall look at it collegially. And already on the 5th of September 2019, when the HACC took place, the changes were effective. Part 12 was supplemented, which determined the procedure for considering cases in the High Anti-Corruption Court. Correspondingly, this part foresaw that both in the court of the first instance and in the appeal chamber, the criminal proceedings will be considered collegially, with the court containing of at least 3 judges, with the necessary mandatory condition that one of the members of the court has the relevant judge term in the office of at least 5 years. This form of operation of the High Anti-Corruption Court was connected with the need to provide high professionalism of the court, decrease the risks of the mistakes and also peculiarities of the choice, because part of the judges of the High Anti-Corruption Court did not have the necessary time in the office. So this operation of the High Anti-Corruption Court has really made it as proper, because when we looked at the dynamics of consideration of criminal proceedings, that was important to bring the trust of the civil population. It's important to mention that although theoretically and practically the principle of collegiality looks like an additional guarantee of the fairness, but there are certain drawbacks of considering it as a collegially. When we look at the dynamics of the consideration of criminal proceedings by HACC, because of the high load, such dynamics was negative, and it was not the last, because this was connected with the increase of authority of the High Anti-Corruption Court, to which they have added civil cases connected with collection of also the administrative that are connected with the collection of income into the state. These circumstances, in terms of the consideration of the court, the European Commission in their report, the European Commission has asked to improve the effectiveness and improve the results in cases about corruption at the high level, through giving to the High Anti-Corruption Court the possibility to look at separate cases as one judge. Also, such recommendations were contained in the State Anti-Corruption Program for 23-25. And as a result of this activity, already in October 2023, the Verkhovna Rada has submitted two alternative draft laws. The first one is 101/78 and 111 and 30. The first draft law was focusing on the problems related to the High Anti-Corruption Court and did not influence the way how the criminal proceedings were looked in the normal jurisdiction courts. Apart from that, the draft law of Ukraine about 111/30 suggested to improve the procedure with some exceptions, with the possibility of the unilateral consideration that gives the possibility to make the collegial consideration by certain. And already in April 24, Verkhovna Rada has supported the draft law 111/30 through the adoption of the law of Ukraine, number 3655. With this law, they cancelled the part 12 of Article 31 of the Criminal Procedure Code of Ukraine, and the procedure for determining the composition of the court in the High Anti-Corruption Court was established in a general procedure for all courts of Ukraine. Also, the same law has cancelled the rule about the availability in the Collegium of Judges, the judge who would have the term in the office of at least 5 years, both in the first instance court as well as in the appeal court. By the way, this legislative novelty would have also an important meaning when they already make the new collegium out of the newly selected judges, because it will not demand that the judge with the long term in the office would definitely be there. Also, we have increased the number of persons who can submit the application. Now these persons can use the right not only in the anti-corruption court, but in all courts of first instance, also in terms of crimes of all severity, not especially severe like it was before. Did the statistics change? Well, I guess it's premature to make this conclusions, but at the moment we have the following results. By the individual proceedings consideration, there were 40 proceedings that were received preliminary, we had 341. And what was important that over this short period of time, this is the data as at the 1st of September 2024, already from 47 decisions that were made unilaterally, and the consideration by one individual judge was already appointed in 28 criminal proceedings. So we see this is quite a positive dynamics. And also I would like to attract your attention that at the moment the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine still has two draft laws. One is about the draft law about introducing changes to the Criminal Procedural Code of Ukraine in terms of considering criminal proceedings against judges. It is aimed at preserving the collegial consideration of the case and engaging the additional colleagues, and also the draft law about introducing changes to the Civil Procedural Code of Ukraine and the administrative justice in terms of improving the procedure for the consideration of cases by the High Anti-Corruption Court, which aims to ensure the proper dynamics of judicial consideration of cases in the order of administrative and civil proceedings. Under these circumstances, there is a high probability that the issue about the format in the High Anti-Corruption Court will be the subject to legislative changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thanks for your interesting analysis of the legislative initiatives and the dynamic for development of the legislation that covers our activities. And based on recent news that have been actively discussed by participants of today's event, we hear about expansion legislatively of the mandate of this HACC board of international experts. These are the most recent trends. Regarding our activities, we are looking forward to election of the new colleagues who will make it possible to perform our activities even more efficiently. Now I'm ready to pass the floor to Judge Speaker of High Anti-Corruption Court Appeal Chamber, Mr. Glotov. You are welcome to share information about work of the court, of the appeal chamber, what's been new, what your achievements are. Thank you, and I have my presentation there. Congratulations to everyone on this 5 years of work. We are working, even though you remember that we do that against the background of there's doubts about constitutionality, which has not yet been addressed by the Constitution Court, but we keep working, we develop case law, and we use case law of other courts. Today, I'd like to speak about what was covered in my part of the publication, as mentioned by the colleagues. Sometimes in case law, it happens that someone comes to the appeal chamber of the court with a motion, and another person a bit later submits changes, amendments to it, or actually withdraws the appeal. It may happen if the suspect or the defense attorney submits the motion and then another defense attorney complements and expands this appeal, or one prosecutor submits that and another one then withdraws it. We've had these cases in the practice of our court in the recent 5 years, and they were known to the public. Legislative provisions that cover this issue. We have Article 403 of the Code of Criminal Procedures. According to it, rejecting the appeal proceeding before completion can be this can be done by the person who submitted the appeal, and colleagues from the Supreme Court said today that, well, I don't wish you to have fewer cases because we are going to have more. Because I believe the president of the court said that. That's right. Sometimes for judges, it's good news when somebody withdraws an appeal, because with our workload, it does make our life easier. On the other hand, it may happen that, and most often people do not do that. So part 3 of Article 403 stipulates that the person who submits the appeal can amend or complement it before the beginning of the hearing. There are also some difficulties there. Why? Imagine the situation where a court or the judge has 3 days to consider an appeal, and in most cases, based on my practice, I can say that that's most of the cases. So as soon as you make your decision late at night, the defense attorney or prosecutor electronically sends the appeal, the short text, because usually the verdict, the decision is also made brief initially. And then when there is the full text of the decision, they may amend this appeal. Sometimes it happens that they just bring this amended appeal 15 minutes before the beginning of the hearing. And of course, that's very unfortunate, because then the judge and the assistants need to work on this appeal. And if we postpone the hearing, we waste time that could be used for hearing other cases, writing texts, and so on and so forth. So it may seem that this is quite a straightforward issue, but actually this is something that impacts one of key indicators for efficiency of work of high anti-corruption court, and this is compliance with the adequate reasonable terms for hearing the cases. Regarding the approaches, these 2 provisions, which I've mentioned already, we see that they can be interpreted in different ways. I mean, the first option is, well, who's the person who submits the appeal, who can withdraw that? Is it's the signatory party, or if we speak about the second option, second interpretation of that, that's someone who acts on behalf of someone who physically signed that. What I mean, under the first approach, if the appeal was submitted by the accused person, none of defense attorneys has the opportunity to amend or complement it. The only way is to prepare the amendments, but they will be initiated by the client. Say about the suspect, or this is the victim, and if the representative is submitted, if the appeal is submitted by the representative of the victim, then the victim has no effect, no impact. And there is the other approach, where they believe that if, for example, there is the accused Ivan, and if the defense attorney Stepan submitted the appeal, and then later on the complements and additions, amendments are submitted by another defense attorney, Stepan, for example. So there it is important to assess the situation, because the notion of the individual who submits the appeal, it is not interpreted properly in the criminal code, and that is why we have these 2 approaches in practice. So what's the case law in courts of appeal? Of course, I do not mention all the examples, because if you look the registry for court decisions, you will find a lot. In the appeal chamber, I remember we had 3 cases, but I only present 2 because the third one was quite long time ago, and I do not remember all the details of that verdict. So, and there are these options for application. For example, the Zaporizhzhia Court of Appeal heard the case, and it happened so that the appeal in that case was submitted by a representative of the victim. At a certain phase, when it was several years after submission of the appeal, the victim submitted an addition to the appeal. Zaporizhzhia Court, you can see the number of the case, so I will not mention the dates and numbers, so you can see that. So the reporting judge in that case, and that was heard individually, and the applicability, he decides to bring this appeal, I mean, this amendments to the victim. He brings them back and he says that in this situation, the first approach must be used, that according to Article 403, the person who submits the appeal is the one who physically signs it, even if it is about legal representatives. And this decision was supported by the Cassation Criminal Code in the composition of the Supreme Court. So this so-called first approach is considered to be the traditional approach. And it's nice, I believe, that this approach, if not prevails, but at least it stays there, because when the practice of the Supreme Court is stable for judges of the Court of Appeal, it is much easier to work and make adequate decisions according to the very essence of the law. Then the Zakarpattia Court of Appeal also heard a case. There, the appeal was submitted by the accused party person, and the defense attorney decided to complement it, and he interpreted the situation according to the second approach, because he's a defense attorney, so why not complement the appeal if this amendments do not go counter to what the client wrote. So the Zakarpattia Court of Appeal made the decision where they did not admit these amendments from the defense attorney, which were submitted in the to complement the appeal. Then that was heard by Cassation Court, and Criminal Cassation Court judges wanted to step back from the traditional practice that I mentioned, and they went to the Grand Chamber of the Supreme Court, and the Grand Chamber believed that the Zakarpattia Court of Appeal did right, that we need to comply with the first approach. So, and they made the clarification on application of provisions of the law. Another example, Vinnytsia Court of Appeal also heard a case. In this situation, one defense attorney submitted the appeal and the other one decided to complement it for the reason that, like, guys, I am the defense attorney by the same accused person. So then these amendments were analyzed in their merits and their essence. And the Cassation Court disagreed with that decision, and among other things, for this reason, the decision of Vinnytsia Court of Appeal was cancelled, and when the case went back to the Court of Appeal. So you can see that Vinnytsia Court in this situation complied with the second approach, that this is the same party in the proceedings, so this is for the benefit of the same accused person. But the Supreme Court disagreed because, well, there the appeal was submitted by another defense attorney. I believe that's right, because there are provisions of the law of Ukraine on the bar, and which regulate activity of defense attorneys, and there is another important aspect there. The practice of law enforcement activities and of defense attorneys' activities may be different. I will not mention specific situations so that somebody could distort my words, but when I worked as a defense attorney and I worked there for a long period of time, different things happened. And that is why, hypothetically, what I will now describe may happen. So this is the situation where they hear a case upon the appeal of the defense attorney against whom law enforcement agency has some negative compromising information. They know how to put pressure on this person so that he didn't try too hard defending the client. And then the defense attorney submits an appeal, and then some pressure is exercised, and then he just stops participating in the case, or the accused person is in pre-detention facility and he deletes some information that about the law, the defense attorney, and he wavered this defense attorney. So this is one situation. So in this case, the defense attorney did everything right, and somebody convinced the accused person to refuse this this defense attorney. And well, then somebody recommends the accused person to refuse withdraw some of the arguments. As a result, the right to effective protection is not guaranteed. So in this situation, when there is a change of defense attorneys, the defense attorney submits the appeal, and even if he or she no longer acts as such, these are the arguments that need to be heard. And now about the practice of the appeal chamber. Based on the cases that I remember, I mentioned two here. One of them is about the situation where I indicate the case law for other courts in Ukraine. So that was the situation of July this year, before summer breaks. One defense attorney submits an appeal in the court session. Another defense attorney came. So there is the defense attorney who submitted that appeal, and then another one comes and submits an amendment to the appeal of the colleague because they defend the same person. So the Collegium of Judges in the court session explained and clarified the practice of the Grand Chamber of the Supreme Court to interpret the content of Article 409. After that, it was a wise decision of defense attorneys. They took the same additions, and another defense attorney signed them, the one who submitted the appeal. As a result, the appeal chamber had to hear the appeal by the first defense attorney, but with those added parts which were submitted by someone who was not the initial appeal party who initially submitted the appeal. So then, thus, the defense attorney did that. So the Collegium of Judges only heard the document submitted initially. Then there was quite a nasty situation, maybe you know this case, and it is quite a high-profile case. However, in that case, the situation was that our court did not receive materials of the investigative judge that were requested for various reasons. And so the decision was pursued to move this case from anti-corruption proceedings to other law enforcement agencies. So we were doing our best, but they didn't give us the case. So at a certain point, the new pretrial investigation body and the prosecutor who managed the case, submitted an appeal to stop the appeal procedure, that they withdraw the appeal. So the prosecutor that exercises oversight of activities of another pretrial investigation body, different from anti-corruption body, withdrew this appeal. And most interpreted this based on this second approach, like the procedural management is changed, so they should have the right to do that. I had an alternative opinion. I believe that Deputy Prosecutor General should waiver that, and someone at a higher level. Okay, now I'm going to complete. This is case law of the Supreme Court. Since 2018, the Supreme Court clearly stated that withdrawing an appeal is only possible for the one who submitted it. For prosecutor, the exception, Article 36, Part 4, the higher prosecutor, the higher authority over that prosecutor who submitted the appeal. And this is not about change of procedural manager. A cassation criminal court in 2023 submitted for the Great Chamber this aspect, but they said no. The one who comes with the appeal has the right to amend it. And the additional arguments, this is, well, the same opinion of 5 judges of the Grand Chamber who had additional arguments to support the decision. Now, speaking about the issues and problems, there may be several. That's of the one who submitted the appeal, then who's going to do that, or changed representative or prosecutor, or it may be change of the place of work, and so on and so forth. Plus, as I mentioned, the risks of interference in the legal possession of a defense attorney when the other one tries to change that possession. I understand that now there is no time for this discussion, but I raised this issue, and please write back and give us your feedback. So the case that was about acceptability on the 29th of August 2024, and I'm going to wrap up, I made the decision to return the appeal court, so supporting the position of the court judge of Zaporizhia. Judge, I considered the appeal submitted by another defense attorney not as an amendment, but as a new appeal, which was beyond the deadline. So, as I mentioned, if judges of courts of appeals, if they face these issues, they may make this decision by considering that as a new appeal, and in this way it is possible to resolve that, and you see my conclusions and summary on the screen. Thank you, Mykola. And let me remind you that you can read more in our publication. And I believe that nobody could expect establishment of our court more than colleagues from the National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And I pass the floor to the leader of the body, Semen, to share some feedback from our work, collaboration over these 5 years, and maybe some recommendations and challenges that we have in our cooperation. Congratulations. Thank you so much. No, I'm joking. So 5 years, that's quite a long term. Unfortunately, this is not yet the average term of the conviction terms that you decide on, because I really wish that in the next period, the average term of sentence is 5 to 8, and us as pre-trial investigation authority, we try to do some homework when you make your decisions. We are in contact with you, and we try to make sure that the materials that we pass to you, that they are very at a due quality level. And of course, we believe that you are part of anti-corruption structure, even though you are reluctant to admit that, because that's how the Ukrainian society sees us. Each of our bodies is established as a response to the expectation of citizens for justice, to support the rule of law, to support rights of citizens, and human rights. We need to respond to every person's expectation for justice. This demand has been formed for centuries, and us being an anti-corruption body with quite difficult, painful, but sometimes successful steps, well, everything that we face, all of those challenges to our independence, and maybe some disputes and joint victories, all of that is something that gives makes it possible for every Ukrainian to be sure that definitely we will form a European society. And I'm grateful to the army that today we can celebrate this anniversary is 5 years of the court, 10 years of the law on NABU, and we will celebrate that due to the armed forces. And this is so incredible that on the third year of the war, due to huge efforts of the Ukrainian nation and our soldiers, we can move on, and we have no right to let them down. So congratulations and happy birthday, Anti-Corruption Court. Thank you, Semen. And now, Alexander, your feedback and your vision for the prospects and our procedural relations. Thank you for this opportunity to participate, and congratulations on your date. That's a mini anniversary, that is. And definitely we have something to compare with. Before 2019, we worked with other courts, and that's a new level, new quality of work. And of course, there are mistakes. We should not forget about them. But Alexander Yurievich is not here who would say that we are working on them, but that's true. So congratulations on this holiday. And also, since it is the practical panel, let me say a couple of words about the terms. We see that the number of the cases in the pipeline is increasing, this backlog, and that is why we need to increase the number of judges. So we need to provide for financial support, and that's also about due salaries, not only for judges, but also for employees of for the staff of Anti-Corruption Court. I guess that's it, and congratulations. I understand everybody is tired and looking forward for lunch. That's why I'm not going to take long. Thank you for your words of congratulations on behalf of your team, and always the strictest critic of our work is the lawyer community. We've had quite emotional discussions and disputes regarding the material law and procedural issues. So good words from the lawyers must be the most valuable thing for us as judges, because it is difficult to hear positive, to deserve positive feedback. However, of course, it would be nice. Hoping for that, I pass the floor to Andrei.
Allow me to use the minute and follow up as a reply to the presentation of Mr. Mikola, just a few topics. First of all, the lawyers practically don't have any special procedural rights. They only can reflect the rights of the defendants, in the context of appeals, the lawyer is not submitting appeal. The lawyer is doing it instead of the person who is doing it. And same way, prosecutor is not representing themselves or the prosecutor's office. They are representing the whole society. So in my belief, I would agree to the position of the Cassation Criminal Court, which was trying to change this approach, and they failed. Because it seems to me that such interpretation does contradict to the spirit of the law. And in terms of Part 4 of Article 36, I believe that it is absolutely not correct that the chief of the prosecutor's office can refuse from the appeal complaint submitted by the prosecutor, because it's about the independence. This norm I would definitely change. Okay, 1 minute is over. In general, of working of HACC and the operation of this whole, in terms of the lawyers and the professional legal staff, I believe I will not be lonesome among these participants of the criminal proceedings. I think prosecutors will agree that in courts, the professional lawyers can be said, not some specific decision which is liked or not liked. This is the competitive process, and not every decision will be liked. But also in the courts, they get the saddest when they have this feeling of indifference, when someone has the feeling that they are not in the court hearing, but rather they're talking to themselves in some empty room. And to all of the compliments and warm words that were voiced, aimed at HACC, I can definitely say that you do care. And this feeling of caring, it can be reflected in various forms, in various shapes, not only in the judicial decisions, and I will say not only about the judges, that also pertains to administrative assistants, staff assistants, everybody who is implementing the HACC and the appeal chamber, they do reflect this feeling that they do care. This is very much felt, this is very much precious, and personally, I don't think I will be the only one who does that. Thank you for this, and exactly this idea that in order to make sure that the justice shall take place, justice needs to be seen to be done. The High Anti-Corruption Court and this appeals chamber, they do keep the standard and they truly implement it. Going back to 2019, I remember how the last month before the start of the work of the High Anti-Corruption Court in the Solominsky district, which was temporarily had this jurisdiction placed with them. So the judges of the Solominsky district could not help waiting when this issues will be passed on to HACC. It doesn't mean to say anything bad about the Solominsky district, but it was this additional load that actually exceeded their normal regular load. And we can see from the materials, from the presentations that have been demonstrated to us, that this load from year to year for the High Anti-Corruption Court does increase, the number of challenges do increase, and so on. I just wanted to remind and to please don't forget everybody who is working in the High Anti-Corruption Court, the appeals chamber, the HACC, the work that you're doing every day, and that seems routine for you. Some 5 years ago, this was really extraordinary and almost impossible. Many thanks for this. The first 5 years are fine. The next 5 years will not be easy, but you will definitely manage that. Thank you. We are very much thankful to all the participants who have come to welcome us, to congratulate us, for the criticism, for the compliments that we feel very much pleasant hearing this, because we do place a lot of effort with our daily work. And in case anyone from the room would have any wish to ask anything from our speakers, so we have this possibility. Please go ahead and ask your question. Could you please pass on the microphone and to whom your question is addressed? Good afternoon, Oleg Novikov, the journalist from Novo Dilo. I have this general question to all participants that's moving court hearings by essence. Very often, I don't want to criticize lawyers, but that seems like from the side of the defense, they permanently don't show up. And we have seen that the number of cases are increasing. And if sentences are growing, it's been just for 1 year, maybe 2. These are the agreements on finding themselves guilty. So the question is it possible to stimulate both sides, the defense and the ones who are making the prosecution, that they would both go to meetings? Because we have a lot of cases in HACC from 2019, 1 episode, a bribe, 2 people who are indicted, but we still don't have the decision of the first instance, and this was already 5 years past. Mykola has agreed to answer that. Let's promote parliamentaries to cancel the norm about timeline. I mean, bringing to responsibility. The lawyers will start going to meetings. Tatiana, also a few words. I have a better idea. These terms of after the case is sent to court, then the maturity period is interrupted, and the agreements on finding themselves guilty, we need to improve this instrument in order not to close the cases with some conditional sentences, but real sentences, maybe for 10 years, but 5. That's what we are suggesting. Compensation of damage and the real sentence. I suggest not to change the criminal process for the 10th time. Just at the level of discussion, we have fixed in the law the principle of continuity of judicial consideration. You can treat it differently, you can differently interpret it, but as an option, every proceedings should be listened without any breaks. On Monday, we start case X, and every day, once we finish it, then we go to case Y. Maybe we have some representatives of the civil society. Maybe we can analyze how it will influence the time. What is more effective? Having 1 meeting of 10 cases, or 9 will wait until continuously 1 was heard, and then we go to the next one. Just as an idea, I can add, you talk about continuous, but I do know lawyers who do the defense. He can have 50 people. Like, for instance, I need to go to Uzhgorod, and he will not be able to participate. So can we do this continuity? If the lawyer says, I have a bunch of clients, he even feels it quite not so easy once a month, because he has some urgent investigative actions. So they will say, I simply will not cope with it. I don't want to say it on behalf of everybody, but I do see that this does exist. And even I was sending a request to HACC, and I received a reply. And there was a lot of moving because the defense was not showing up. Can you hear me? The organization of the judicial process is definitely, it's all participants. First of all, it's the work of the judge. But in this context, it's very interesting opinion from the point of view of continuously looking at the case. That's the American tradition. And when they ask the question to some American judges in terms of, I mean, how can you organize all the participants for 1 week? or 2 weeks, they don't even imagine how is it possible that the defense cannot show up in the court. So in this context, we have worked on a very interesting, effective draft law about fighting the misuses in the judicial process, but unfortunately, Verkhovna Rada was not supporting this, and somewhere it is somewhere in the committees. So in this particular context, maybe to introduce changes to the material law in terms of cancellation the limitation periods, that's quite a radical method. But in terms of certain limitations, in terms of the participation of 5 defenders at the same time, we do have the practice, but giving the possibility to talk only to one of them in this context. And still to promote Verkhovna Rada to support this draft law in terms of fighting the misuses, that would be an effective method to make sure that the judge in the court hearing would react to various circumstances, and that would also influence the effectiveness. And I also mentioned that it's very effective when one person is considering it. So we hope that the future statistics will also be positive in this context. Many thanks for the questions, many thanks for the answers, and I would like to ask Ms. Vera to say the final words. Ms. Vera, please, the floor is yours. I will not take too much of your time. I just wanted to thank everybody for sharing this day with us and sharing with us the part of your forums that really motivates us, that really moves and inspires us for the further cooperation. I would like to thank everybody and to invite to lunch. Please, bon appetit.